Hello and welcome to this week's episode of For the Love of Chiropractic. On today's show, we're going to be talking about the person, the employee, the coworker that works with you that I believe is arguably the most important person on your team. And I know you've heard me say that before when we talked about the front desk position, when we talked about the valuable floor CA, even when we talked about hiring and training an associate doctor. But on today's episode, we're going to be talking about the one who directs all of them and even you, the doctor, the owner of the practice. Today we'll be talking about the fantastic office manager. Welcome to another episode of For the Love of Chiropractic. I'm your host, Dr. Robert Freeman. I've been in practice for over 30 years, and I continue to work in a $1 million practice that I built, ran, and sold. I've taught, lectured, and coached our profession, and helped so many chiropractors build the practice and the life of their dreams. And now, I want to help you do the same. So here's today's show. As I said in the introduction, today we'll be talking about the fantastic office manager and all the things that they have to know, see, do, and take care of to help your practice be the optimum that it can be, should be, and you want it to be. And the reason that I say that is because, let's face it, the great office manager simply knows it all. When it comes to the front desk position, they know the work that should be done. They know the procedures. They know the way the phone should be answered and if it's being answered on time and appropriately. They know the scripts that the front desk CA is saying at different times to help patients work best with your office. And not only do they know how to do all of those things, not only are they listening and monitoring to how all those things are getting and being done, they also have the ability to train and teach that, or retrain and reteach as necessary, to the front desk team when they're not quite working up to the measure that you know and they know. And when I say they, I mean the office manager. No, it should be done at. And while your office manager is in the business office doing the things that she does, and of course when I say she, it could be he or she, but we'll use she as the example, they're also constantly monitoring the front desk to be sure that things are running smoothly there. And if the office manager needs to drop everything that they're currently working on and step out front to handle a difficult situation, or it's just crunch time in the office and the way the schedule has turned up, it's a second pair of hands or a third pair of hands, depending on your front desk, working to get things done efficiently. And the office manager is happy to step up and help and keep things moving. And then at the appropriate time, the office manager simply slips away back to the business office and jumps right back in to whatever she was working on behind the scenes to keep things moving. But it's not just the front desk that the office manager, that the fantastic office manager, is keeping an eye on, an ear on, and paying attention to. It's also the floor CAs. Because the good office manager, the great office manager, knows all the things that a great floor CA knows and is able to apply also. In some states and countries, chiropractic assistants need to be licensed and certified or registered, so your office manager should absolutely have that registration so they can step up and act as a floor CA if necessary. So what that means is clinically, they know all the anatomical landmarks. It means that they can teach patients different exercises or set up any of the different therapies that you do in your office. It means that the great floor CA can discuss nutrition or any other procedures that you may offer in your office that a patient may have questions about. Maybe you do acupuncture in your office also. Maybe you do dry needling in your office also. Maybe you teach yoga classes in your office, or so many other things that the great floor CA and the great office manager knows all of the different facets of it, that they can talk about it in layman's terms, shoulder to shoulder with the patient about this might help you. You might want to ask doc about that also. And speaking of different procedures, in many places, the floor CA is also allowed to take x-rays of the patient, of the new patient when they come into the office. The CA can often take the history. The chiropractic assistant can also perform certain aspects of the examination and take the x-rays, or on a reevaluation, they can also do certain testing, including re-x-rays if that's necessary and indicated. So obviously, your office manager should be able to do all of those things with incredible efficiency. And not only can they do them, not only can they monitor if they're being done properly, they should also be able to teach them and reteach when necessary, if things are not being done at the level of expertise that you demand, that your patients expect in your office. Another aspect that the office manager needs to understand fully is the report of findings. In many places, it doesn't have to be the doctor who does a report of findings. And if that's true for where you practice, I think that your office manager should be able to do a fantastic report of findings, at least as good as you can do, and be able to explain to patients, again, because they're speaking to them not doctor to patient, they're speaking shoulder to shoulder at a level that the patient's going to understand. And as doctors, we should also speak to our patients shoulder to shoulder when we're speaking face to face in language that they understand. But as doctors, sometimes the patients are scared of us a little bit, whereas the office manager doesn't have that fear factor. So not only can the office manager do the report of findings competently and confidently, they can teach it. Can they teach it to the other CAs, if CAs in your office do report of findings? Can they teach it to associate chiropractors who are coming to work in your office also? And for that matter, regarding the great report of findings, could you run scripts with the office manager, and could she keep you sharp on the aspects of, in this case, the report of findings, that you want to be kept sharp on also? Because we all need practice. Even the best golf pros in the world go out to practice on a regular basis. But once the report of findings has been completed, the last portion of it is explaining the finances of care, whether it's a care plan, the insurance, the copays, whatever it may be. Can the fantastic office manager explain that in such a way that the person's going, oh yeah, that's easy, I can afford that, let's get started with care? Because if they don't or can't, if you haven't handled the money thing up front, it's just going to be a problem later down the road. So the great office manager is able to take care of the money stuff with effortless ease so that the patient can get the care that they need so desperately. And speaking of taking care of the finances, I do believe that every doctor in the office needs to be able to sit down and explain and own the finances, the financial side of a care plan, to any patient that they need to do that. But once you own it, once you can do it, then it's okay for you to hand that off to someone like the office manager or a very well-trained CA that the office manager has also co-trained, so that this procedure gets taken care of, because I like doctors handling clinical stuff and the office staff, the office manager, handling the financial side of it. It allows you to stay in your lane, clinically helping the person with their health care and not getting involved in the money side of it. You need to own it. You need to have your business hat on at the appropriate time, but the patients should see you as being the doctor, not the money person. The doctor, the person who's providing them with the health care and helping them get where they need to from a health care perspective. The office manager can do the money side. In fact, one of my favorite things to do is to have the office manager, when she goes in to do the report of findings, financial side, this is after a doctor has done the report of findings clinically with the patient. The office manager goes in and sits down, and I like the very first thing for the office manager to say is, did the doctor say he's going to be able to help you? and listen to what the response is, because the office manager can then report back to you. They understood, yes or no. And then the second question is, so what did the doctor say is wrong with you? And again, the patient is going to explain it back as best they possibly can to the office manager, who can then later tell you, yes, they got it, no, they didn't. And if you need to re-explain something to the patient, it becomes very, very obvious and very easy to do when you go in to do the very first adjustment after that financial consult has been done. So as we're talking about the fantastic office manager, the things we've just gone through are all of the public things that we see they're doing all the time, and the other coworkers in the office, the front desk, the floor CA, and even the patients, they see the office manager flitting around and handling all of these things, hopefully with effortless ease, and switching on a moment's notice from front desk to busy floor CA to teaching exercises to doing a financial consult to answering the phone and then disappearing back into the business office to do what? To do all of those things that are going on behind the scenes while all these other things are going on. I think the great office manager in the practice of running the business office knows all the ins and outs of all of the different health insurances that you take and participate with in your office. From the dropping of the claims, dropping a clean claim, all the way through the posting of the payments when they come back. It also means the office manager is keeping up with the changes that the different payers are putting upon us, because we all know, anyone who's done anything with any type of health insurance, it seems the rules of the game change all the time, and there's a new way that they look at this, or a new way to code this, and they don't want to pay that anymore. You have to use this code instead. So keeping up with all of those changes and the solutions, is your office manager a key, a master in finding the solutions as the changes occur. Sometimes they come out in state newsletters from the state associations. Sometimes it comes out from the national associations. And other times they can find these things from talking to their counterparts in other practices. Hey, did you do this? I tried that. That didn't work. I even know an office manager who, when something comes up and isn't getting paid, they'll try billing it out a few different ways to see what comes back as paid or not paid, and they find the solution that way. And when their friends are doing the same thing, it's amazing how quickly the office managers can typically find solutions for some of these billing and payment issues that come up. And on top of that, the great office manager is also staying on top of the auto accident cases, the work comp cases, checking in with the case managers or attorneys as needed, making sure all of that is getting done appropriately, the billing, the office notes, all of that, all those wheels are turning, so the office is getting and staying up to date with all the things that it needs. And the great office manager is also staying on top of all of the existing patient accounts. If they're prepay accounts, how many visits have they paid for, or what amount of time have they paid for if you're doing a UCAF system in your office. UCAF stands for unlimited care at a fixed fee. There's some offices that do that, and it's legal some places and not legal other places. Some offices work on a pay-as-you-go with keeping a credit card on file. And again, the credit card numbers have to be kept a certain way, and that changes depending on where you're practicing to be sure that those numbers are kept securely. When is the card going to expire? Do you get that ahead of time? Does the office manager know when Sue's credit card is going to expire so that she doesn't end up with a balance because we're 2, 3, 4 payments behind because she didn't pay for a few visits? Because that's never a comfortable conversation to have with somebody. And some offices extend credit to their patients so the person builds up an account balance as they go through care, and they've set up for the office to accept monthly payments on the account. And again, the office manager is aware of exactly where the person is on their payments. And I think those payments should post automatically on a credit card, but again, keeping track of where that is and how it's working. And another great procedure for the office manager to do on a rotating basis depending on the specific makeup of your practice, is what I call the dirty dozen. Run the dirty dozen of the largest accounts receivable accounts that your office has. Perhaps that needs to be done monthly. Perhaps it needs to be done quarterly. Perhaps it needs to be done semi-annually, twice a year. But to run through those and find out where the money is and when is it coming in, when is it to be expected, are things the office manager does, and whether they do that personally or they hand that off to one of their subordinates and report back to you, not during office hours, because during office hours you're seeing patients. Outside of office hours, when you're the business owner, the entrepreneur, they're reporting to you what the business numbers are doing. And perhaps one of the most important pieces of the fantastic office manager is the office manager knows and understands that no one person can ever hold the practice, the company, hostage. If something happened to that one person, any one person, would the practice stop or have a problem? Or if for some reason, if the person was out of town, didn't come back, God forbid, drop dead, could the practice still continue to provide the fantastic healthcare that it's been providing? The office manager knows no one can hold the practice hostage, and therefore there has to be somebody else in the office or associated with the office who knows all the same things that the office manager knows. Maybe not to the great extent that the office manager does, but in a pinch, they could step in and step up and keep the practice moving forward until the practice manager was able to return or a new one could be hired. And this procedure that we just discussed of nobody ever holding the practice hostage, I know we've talked about it as a cross-training piece on previous episodes of the podcast. In this particular case, it even applies to the doctor. God forbid something happened to you, the practice owner. What would happen to your patients? Do you have an associate doctor who could step up and continue to take care of the patients if you couldn't be there for some reason? If God forbid something happened to you that you couldn't be in the office first thing in the morning? Or does it stop with you? I don't think any of it should stop with any one person, and that's just good future planning for every position in the business, of every business for that matter. But again, in this case, we're specifically talking about the office manager. And finally, there is one incredibly important aspect or attribute of the fantastic office manager. The fantastic office manager, to be truly effective, has an owner's mentality. Because they understand it all matters. Everything in the practice matters. Is it clean? Is it well lit? Is it well stocked? Is it well handled? All of it matters. And the office manager is often called your work wife. That's not meant to be sexist in any way, shape, or form. I've spoken with female chiropractors who talk about their work wife office manager that they had, and those chiropractors were heterosexual. It has nothing to do with that. It's simply someone who's standing shoulder to shoulder with you. You own the practice. They're your work wife in the trenches, making sure it all happens. And when we talk about your office manager being your work wife, they're your deepest confidant about everything that can affect the practice, could affect the practice, might affect the practice, or any aspect of the business in any way, shape, or form. Because one day, and God forbid, I hope it doesn't happen, but one day the poop could hit the fan, and it often does in practices. In all businesses it does. And when the poop hits the fan, when the shit hits the fan, can you tell them anything? Could you sit with your office manager and say, this is what happened, help me get out of it, or what are we going to do about this? Or maybe they're bringing it to you. What are we going to do about this? And when I say get out of this, I'm not talking about doing anything illegal or immoral. I'm talking about how we're going to make the situation right, because there's always a right way to do things, and it's never too late to do things right. So when you have cultivated, hired, trained somebody of this caliber, someone with this incredible expertise, who stands with you side by side, has your back, and you know you can always depend on them, I say the office manager needs to not just be paid fairly, but needs to be well paid. Because let's face it, if they're helping you with all the aspects of the practice of your business, they know how much everybody in the office is making. Frankly, the office manager probably has a really good idea exactly how much you're making too. So bottom line at the end of the day, what should you be paying your office manager? I think they should have a fantastic benefits package, and I also think that their pay should be a direct reflection of their level of competence and the responsibility that they assume for the fantastic running of your practice while you're providing phenomenal care to as many people as possible. All right, and that's our show for today. If you have a question about today's show or your own practice, feel free to reach out at fortheloveofchiropractic.com. Before making changes to your practice, be sure to seek legal advice regarding those changes and regulations in your state. For the Love of Chiropractic is an RGF production, all rights reserved. And thanks for listening. Original music provided by Hunter Rich Music.